Amora screamed as Preston Hale's icy hands shoved her toward the shimmering water. Her heart pounded as the cold water swallowed her, her arms flailing against the teeth of danger she couldn't see. Gasps and screams erupted around the mansion pool. Billionaires frozen, drinks trembling in their hands. She hit the edge of the pool and slipped beneath the surface. Sharp fins cut through the water, sharks circling like predators sensing blood. Get her! Make her regret ever stepping into my house. Preston Hale's roar cut through the chaos, his face twisted with cruel delight. Amora's vision blurred, but she remembered Malik's words, sharp and steady in her mind. Rich folks don't see us the same. But they will learn, Amora. They will. And in that moment, as the sharks circled and the crowd shrieked, she realized one thing. Preston hadn't imagined that this day would change everything. This was a day no one at the mansion would ever forget. And this was just the beginning. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe, because you won't believe what happens next. Amora's fight for survival will shock you, inspire you, and make you question who really has power when no one is watching. The sun burned bright over the Atlantic, glinting off the glass walls of Preston Hale's billion-dollar Miami mansion. Waves crashed softly in the distance, mixing with the hum of laughter, clinking glasses, and jazz drifting from the live band. Every guest was someone powerful. Politicians, CEOs, heirs of old wealth. All gathered around the blue-tinted shark pool that stretched like a window into the ocean itself. Amora Johnson adjusted her maid's uniform and tried to keep her hands from shaking as she balanced a tray of champagne. The air was thick with perfume and arrogance. Everywhere she looked, people sparkled with diamonds. She could feel their eyes slide over her like she was invisible, until one man's gaze locked onto her. Preston Hale. The host. Her boss. The billionaire everyone here worshipped like a king. He was tall, tanned, his white suit spotless. His smile never reached his eyes. Careful, sweetheart, he said as she stepped near his group. These glasses cost more than your year's pay. The men around him laughed. Amora forced a polite smile. Yes, sir. She leaned forward to serve, but her wrist trembled from the heat and the nerves. The last glass tipped. Champagne spilled across his jacket. The laughter cut short. The world went silent. Preston's jaw tightened. The gold watch on his wrist caught the sun as he dabbed at the stain, his smirk sharp as glass. Well, look at that, he said, voice dripping venom. Guess welfare's paying well these days. You can't even hold a tray straight. Laughter erupted again, harsher this time. Some guests hid their smiles. Others didn't bother. I'm so sorry, sir, Amora whispered, bending to wipe the floor. Preston's hand gripped her chin, forcing her to look up. No, no. Let everyone see what failure looks like. He glanced toward the pool behind him, its surface gleaming. Maybe we should give her a real lesson in balance. Preston, someone murmured nervously. She's just a maid. He ignored them. You think I'm cruel? His smile widened. Cruelty is nature's law, darling. You swim, or you sink. Then, before Amora could move, he shoved her. Gasps tore through the crowd. Her scream echoed as she plunged into the pool. The water was ice against her skin, her uniform heavy. Below her, dark shapes moved, sleek, fast, circling. Sharks. She thrashed, swallowing salt water, trying to reach the edge. People shouted. Some filmed. No one helped. Preston leaned over the glass railing, laughing. Don't worry, sweetheart, he called out. They are well fed, mostly. Amora kicked harder, lungs burning. Her vision blurred. The shadows closed in. She screamed one last time before she disappeared beneath the rippling blue. The crowd erupted. Panic, shouts, someone calling for security. Preston's grin faltered. He peered down into the water, searching for the dark cloud of blood he expected. But none came. The water stilled. Then, without warning, a violent splash erupted from the other side of the pool. Someone screamed, "Preston, look out!" He spun just as the divider beneath the surface began to rise. Slowly, mechanically, grinding metal echoing across the terrace. Behind the glass, one shark's fin cut through the water, heading straight toward him. And somewhere below, unseen, a pair of brown eyes opened in the depths. Before the mansion, before the sharks, before the humiliation that would change her life forever, there was a small apartment on the south side of Atlanta. The kind of place where the walls were thin, the neighbors argued through the night, and the hum of passing trains became a lullaby. Amora Johnson stood by the stove, stirring a pot of soup that smelled more like water than food. The air conditioner hadn't worked in months, and sweat clung to her forehead. Behind her, her younger brother Malik lay on a second-hand couch, a blanket pulled up to his chin. His skin looked pale, his breathing uneven. "Don't burn it again," he teased weakly, his voice cracking with a smile that tried to hide pain. Amora laughed softly. "I'm not that bad, Malik. You just don't appreciate fine dining." He coughed, and her laughter faded. Every sound of it reminded her how sick he really was. The doctors said he needed surgery, something about a defective valve in his heart, but the cost was more than she could ever imagine. Every morning, Amora worked double shifts at a diner, serving strangers who couldn't even remember her name. Every night, she searched job boards, applying to anything that might cover his medical bills. Nursing school was her dream, but even community college felt like another planet away. Then one evening, as she scrolled through listings, a post caught her eye. Live-in housemaid needed, Miami. High pay, luxury estate, confidential employer. The pay made her blink twice. It was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. "Malik," she said, excitement bubbling up. "I think I found something." He turned his head, suspicious. "Way. Florida. A mansion. They cover room and board. I just have to take care of cleaning and serving guests." Malik frowned. "You don't know these people. Rich folks don't see us the same, Mara. You go there, you be careful. Promise me." She smiled, brushing a hand through his hair. "I'll be fine. You'll see. This could change everything." He looked away, his voice quieter now. "You always think you can change people, but they'll never see your heart, just your skin." She didn't want to believe that. She couldn't afford to. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "You'll get that surgery. I swear it." Days later, Amora packed her single suitcase. The neighborhood kids waved goodbye. The bus station smelled like diesel and cheap coffee. She clutched Malik's photograph in her hand, her heart heavy but full of hope. As the bus rolled down the long Florida highway, the sky turned orange and gold. She stared out the window, dreaming of palm trees and ocean air, imagining a better life, one where she wasn't invisible. Hours later, as dawn broke, the bus slowed. Through the glass, she saw white marble gates rising from the earth like the entrance to another world. The metal gleamed under the sun, engraved with a single name, Hale Estate. Two men in black suits stood by the gate, faces blank, earpieces glinting. Amora's stomach tightened. The driver nodded toward her. "End of the line, miss." She stepped off the bus, suitcase in hand, as the gates began to open with a low mechanical groan. Slow, deliberate, almost like they were swallowing her whole. The Hale mansion rose like a white palace above the Miami coast, its windows stretching to the sky, catching every ray of sunlight. Amora stood at the edge of the driveway, her suitcase trembling in her hand as fountains sprayed arcs of crystal water behind her. She had never seen anything so beautiful, or so terrifying. A woman in a navy blue uniform met her at the steps. "You must be Amora." "I'm Mrs. Whitlow, head of household staff," she said briskly, not smiling. "You'll follow my rules, and you'll survive here. Break them, and you'll wish you hadn't." Inside, the mansion gleamed like a museum. Marble floors so polished she could see her reflection. Chandeliers like frozen rain. Portraits of powerful people whose eyes seemed to follow her every step. The air smelled like jasmine and money. As they passed the dining room, Amora spotted her new employers. Preston Hale, tall, tanned, and broad-shouldered, sat at the head of the table, typing on his phone. Across from him was Victoria Hale, elegant in a cream dress, her hair in a perfect bun. When she looked up, Her blue eyes softened with warmth. "Oh, you must be our new girl," Victoria said, rising gracefully. "Welcome to our home. I hope you'll find it comfortable." Her voice was smooth, almost too kind. "Thank you, Amora said quietly. Victoria's smile deepened. "Please, call me Mrs. Hale. And remember, my husband values loyalty above everything." Mrs. Whitlow led Amora to the servants' quarters, a narrow corridor behind the kitchen, lined with small rooms no bigger than closets. "This is yours," she said, handing her a uniform. "Breakfast service starts at 5 a.m. sharp. No mistakes, no delays." That night, Amora joined the other maids folding linens in the laundry room. The women were quiet until one finally whispered, "Don't look him in the eye." Amora glanced up. "Who?" "The master," another said, lowering her voice. "Preston Hale. He's got a temper. Fired a gardener last week just for talking too loud near his office." They all went silent again. The weight of their fear hung heavy in the air. Days blurred into one another. Amora scrubbed floors, polished crystal, and served drinks at endless gatherings. No one looked at her twice. She was a shadow moving through someone else's kingdom. Useful, invisible, forgotten. Late one night, after serving dinner, she lingered near the hallway outside the dining room. Preston's voice carried through the open door. "I'm tired of these charity programs," he snapped. "Hiring them just to look good on paper, it's a waste. They'll never rise above what they are." Amora froze, heart pounding. Them. She didn't need to hear more to know exactly who he meant. Victoria's calm voice followed. "Now, darling, don't get worked up. Appearances matter. Let the world think you're generous." Preston laughed bitterly. "Generous? Please. You can dress them up, but they'll always be what they were born to be." Amora's throat tightened. She turned to slip away quietly, but her eyes met Victoria's through the glass door. Victoria was looking straight at her, and smiling. The next morning, the smell of roasted garlic and butter drifted through the mansion's halls, guiding Amora toward the kitchen. It was the only room that ever felt alive. The clang of pots, the hiss of steam, the low hum of radio music fighting to be heard over chaos. Behind the counter stood a man with sleeves rolled up and a scar running down his forearm. His movements were steady, efficient, and precise. When he saw Amora struggling to carry a crate of produce, he stepped over, his voice calm. "Let me get that before Mrs. Whitlow thinks you dented her tomatoes." Amora smiled shyly. "Thank you?" "Ethan," he said, extending a flour-dusted hand. "Ethan Rowe, head chef and occasional therapist to overworked staff." She laughed softly. It was the first time she'd smiled since arriving. Over the next few days, Ethan became her quiet anchor in that cold, glittering house. Between breakfast rushes and dinner preps, he taught her shortcuts to survive the mansion's chaos, how to avoid Preston's temper, when to duck out of sight, where the cameras didn't reach. One evening, as she wiped the counters, Ethan slid a small paper bag across to her. "Take this," he said. Amora peeked inside. Sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of juice. "What's this for?" "You said your brother's in the hospital, right? Mailroom guy owes me a favor. He'll make sure this gets to him." Her throat tightened. "Ethan, you don't have to." "I know," he said simply. "But somebody should." For the first time since she'd stepped off that bus, she felt seen. Later that week, while setting the table for dinner, Amora met Lila Hale, Preston's teenage daughter. Unlike her parents, Lila had a softness that didn't fit the mansion's icy perfection. She was 16, barefoot on marble, sketchbook tucked under her arm. "Hey," Lila whispered as Amora polished silverware. "You're Amora, right? Your hair's so pretty. Wish I could wear mine natural like that." Amora blushed, glancing around to make sure no one heard. "Thank you, Miss Lila." "Just Lila," she said with a smile. "You don't have to act scared here. Not with me." They talked in stolen moments, between chores, behind pillars, in the garden. Lila showed Amora her drawings, and Amora told her stories about Atlanta sunsets. For a brief while, the mansion didn't feel like a prison. Amora started to believe that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in this house was cruel. Maybe light could exist here after all. One evening, after dinner service, she lingered in the kitchen helping Ethan clean up. They laughed about the guests' ridiculous demands, golden napkins, sparkling ice water, and for a moment, she forgot her fear. Then the laughter died. The air shifted. Ethan's eyes flicked past her, and his face went pale. Amora turned. Preston Hale stood in the doorway, still in his tailored suit, hands in his pockets, watching them like a hawk. His expression was calm, but his eyes were cold, sharp, and dangerous. He didn't say a word. He just smiled. And it was the kind of smile that promised trouble. The following Saturday night, the mansion pulsed with music and laughter. Dozens of luxury cars lined the driveway, their headlights casting diamonds across the marble floor. Inside, waiters in crisp uniforms hurried between tables, serving caviar and champagne. Amora tried to keep her head down, moving from guest to guest, praying she wouldn't draw attention. But Preston Hale noticed everything. Amora. His voice cut through the chatter like a blade. Every head turned. She froze, tray in hand. Yes, sir? Preston leaned back in his chair, surrounded by powerful men in tailored suits. Say that again, he said, smirking. The way you just said it. Her brow furrowed. Say what, sir? There it is again. He laughed, mimicking her accent crudely. Sir. You hear that, gentlemen? Straight from the heart of the South. Laughter rippled around the table. Heat crawled up Amora's neck. I didn't mean. Oh, don't be shy, Preston interrupted. Tell us about your little town. The one with the busted gas station and the corner store that sells dreams for $5. Some guests laughed harder. Others shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to hear. Amora's voice trembled. I'm here to work, sir. Not to. Then work, Preston snapped, his tone turning sharp. The floor looks filthy. Get on your knees and clean it. A stunned silence fell over the room. The band stopped playing. Lila's chair scraped against the floor. Dad, stop, she whispered. You're embarrassing her. Sit down, Lila, he barked. Maybe she'll remember her place next time. Victoria sipped her wine, her expression unreadable. Let the girl do as she's told, she said softly. Ethan stepped forward from the kitchen doorway, fury burning in his eyes. That's enough, Mr. Hale. Preston turned slowly. What did you just say? Ethan's jaw tightened. You're humiliating her. Preston rose from his chair, the laughter gone now. And you're forgetting who signs your paycheck, soldier. His voice dropped to a growl. You want to join her on the floor? Ethan's fists clenched, but he didn't move. No, sir. Good, Preston said. Then stay in your lane. Amora knelt down, her hands trembling as she scrubbed the spotless marble. Tears blurred her vision, each stroke a silent scream she couldn't let out. Lila turned away, crying quietly, while Victoria watched with the calm detachment of someone studying art. When the party finally ended, Amora slipped away to her tiny room behind the laundry hall. Her knees ached, and her pride felt shattered beyond repair. She buried her face in her hands, trying to hold back the sobs. That's when she heard the knock. Soft, deliberate. She opened the door, and froze. Victoria Hale stood there in a silk robe, her diamond earrings catching the dim light. Her expression was gentle, almost sympathetic. My husband is cruel, she said in a low voice. But maybe, you and I can help each other. Amora blinked through her tears. Help each other. Victoria's smile deepened, cold and knowing. If you want your freedom and a small fortune, you'll listen carefully. The next morning, the mansion felt strangely quiet. The party was over, but its tension lingered like smoke. Amora moved carefully through the halls, still haunted by the humiliation from the night before. Her knees ached from scrubbing, and her pride felt crushed beyond recognition. Just as she reached the laundry corridor, Victoria appeared again, immaculate, calm, as though nothing had happened. "Amora," she said softly, "come with me." Amora hesitated, then followed her through a corridor she had never entered before. The walls were lined with paintings worth more than her entire neighborhood. At the end was a private study. Victoria closed the door behind them and motioned for her to sit. "You must think I'm a monster," Victoria began, her tone surprisingly vulnerable. "I should have stopped him last night. But you don't understand what it's like living with Preston." Amora kept her eyes low. "It's not my place." Victoria sighed, then did something unexpected. She pulled back her sleeve. Dark bruises bloomed across her arm. "He does this when no one's looking. When the cameras are off. To me. To the staff." Amora's breath caught. "He hits you." Victoria nodded faintly, her eyes shining with controlled tears. "He's not just cruel, Amora. He's dangerous. The money, the power, it's built on lies and blood. I need your help to end it." "My help?" "You see things the rest of us can't," Victoria said. "He never notices you. That's what makes you perfect. I need you to find proof, documents, recordings, anything that exposes what he's doing. Offshore accounts. Secret projects. I can pay you $100,000. Amora stared, unsure if she'd heard correctly. 100,000. Victoria leaned closer. "Enough to take care of your brother's surgery. Enough to disappear." Amora's heart pounded. It sounded too good to be real, but the bruises on Victoria's arm looked too real to ignore. Malik's pale face flashed through her mind. The doctor's words, "Without surgery, it's only a matter of time." "I could get caught," she whispered. Victoria's voice softened. "I'll make sure you don't. I'll protect you. We both deserve freedom." When Victoria left, Amora sat frozen, the offer echoing in her head. She knew it was dangerous. But she also knew what $100,000 could mean. That evening, she told Ethan everything. He dropped the spoon he was holding. "You're not serious." "She showed me bruises," Amora said quietly. "She needs my help." Ethan shook his head. "That woman doesn't need help. She needs an audience. Don't trust her, Amora. Whatever game she's playing, you're the pawn." But Amora couldn't shake the image of those bruises. "If there's a chance to stop him and save Malik, I have to take it." Later that night, when the mansion finally slept, Amora crept down the east hall. Her footsteps were silent on the marble. Preston's office door was locked, but Victoria had slipped her a key. She slipped inside. The air smelled of leather and cologne. Papers covered the desk in neat piles, but one drawer was locked. She pried it open and froze. Inside was a thick black folder stamped in red ink. Project Blackbird. The folder felt heavier than paper had any right to be. Amora's hands trembled as she lifted it, the black cover embossed with a golden emblem she didn't recognize. She flipped it open, and her stomach twisted. Inside were documents stamped confidential, bank statements, wire transfers, and contracts under ghost companies. Names of Caribbean banks appeared again and again, alongside hidden accounts belonging to Preston Hale. But what truly made her chest tighten were the internal memos, company policies that targeted minority employees, coded language, secret hiring bans, and emails where executives mocked diversity quotas. Her breath hitched. This isn't just corruption, she thought. It's racism, systemic, deliberate, and buried beneath luxury. She pulled out her phone, opened the camera, and began recording. Her voice shook as she whispered each file name aloud, capturing everything. The light from the screen flickered across the polished desk, making her heart pound faster. A sound echoed outside, the faint click of heels on marble. Panic surged through her veins. She shoved the folder back, locked the drawer, and barely had time to slip the key into her apron before the door burst open. "Amora!" Victoria's voice cut through the dark. Amora jumped back, clutching her phone. "Mrs. Hale, I was just..." Victoria stepped inside, her silk gown gliding across the floor. "You found something, didn't you?" "I don't." Victoria's eyes darted toward the desk. She moved quickly, opening the same drawer Amora had just locked. Her fingers brushed the folder. "Project Blackbird," she whispered, almost reverently. Then she turned, her expression calm, collected. "Good work, Amora." Amora frowned. "You said you didn't know what he was hiding." "I didn't," Victoria replied smoothly, though her tone carried an unsettling satisfaction. "But now we both do." She reached for the folder again, flipping through its contents. These papers could destroy him. Illegal contracts, discrimination records, even evidence of bribes. "Do you realize what this means?" Amora's voice was small. "It means he's worse than we thought." Victoria smiled faintly, her reflection glimmering in the glass cabinet. "It means I finally have leverage." There was something chilling about the way she said it. Amora felt the air grow colder. "I thought you wanted justice," she said carefully. "Oh, I do," Victoria said, snapping the folder shut. "But sometimes justice wears diamonds, dear." Amora's phone buzzed softly, a notification from Malik's doctor. She quickly silenced it, but Victoria's gaze flicked toward her pocket. "You recorded everything?" she asked. Amora hesitated, caught between fear and instinct. "For proof." Victoria stepped closer. "Good girl." Before Amora could respond, another sound shattered the moment. Heavy footsteps echoing from the hallway. Deep, deliberate, and unmistakable. Preston Hale. Victoria's expression shifted instantly, from predator to perfect wife. She shoved the folder into Amora's hands. "Hide it. Now." Amora's pulse thundered. She stuffed the folder behind a curtain just as the office door handle turned. Preston's voice boomed from outside, sharp and suspicious. "Victoria? Why's the office door open?" Victoria forced a smile, whispering through clenched teeth, "Say nothing." The door creaked open. Preston stepped inside, his tailored suit gleaming, his eyes narrowing on both of them. "Did I interrupt something?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. Amora's heart stopped. The slam of the office door echoed through the marble halls like thunder. Preston Hale's fury filled the mansion, thick and sharp as smoke. His voice cut through the air. "Who's been in my office?" He scanned the room, eyes darting across his polished desk, the half-open drawer, the faint scuff marks on the floor. Then his gaze landed on something small, silky fabric caught on the corner of his chair. Amora's scarf. His jaw tightened. "So," he hissed, gripping it in his fist, "the maid thinks she can steal from me." Victoria stood in the doorway, arms folded, her expression perfectly measured. "Maybe it was just misplaced," she said sweetly. But the faint twitch at the corner of her lips gave away her satisfaction. Preston didn't respond. He turned on his heel and stormed down the hall, his heavy steps echoing like war drums. In her tiny quarters at the end of the servants' wing, Amora sat trembling on the edge of her bed. Her phone was still clutched in her hand, the recording intact, the folder's images burned into her mind. Her pulse raced. She could hear him yelling orders to security outside. "Find her," he barked. "She's not setting foot off this property." The walls seemed to close in. Just as panic overtook her, the door burst open. Not Preston, but Ethan. His face was pale, urgent. "You need to come with me. Now." "I didn't take anything," she whispered. "Doesn't matter," he interrupted. "He's coming for you." Without another word, he grabbed her hand and led her through the servant hallways, past the kitchen, down a narrow staircase that smelled of dust and old wood. They slipped into the mansion's basement pantry, a dim room stacked with crates of wine and dry goods. Ethan shut the door softly behind them. The silence was suffocating. Amora's chest heaved. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I've seen what he does to people who cross him," Ethan said, voice low. "And because you don't deserve this." She looked at him, eyes wet with fear and disbelief. "He's going to kill me if he finds out." "Not if I can stop it," he said firmly. They crouched behind a shelf, barely breathing. Footsteps thudded above, the security team sweeping the hallways. The radio static crackled with Preston's voice. Check every room. She's hiding somewhere. Amora's hands shook, and Ethan reached out, covering them with his own. For a brief second, everything stilled. The fear, the noise, the chaos. It was just them, breathing in sync, hearts pounding. Whatever happens, he whispered, I'll get you out of here. She nodded, holding his gaze. Thank you. A loud knock broke the moment. Someone was in the kitchen above them. A guard's muffled voice called out, Sir, we've got something. You'll want to see this. Minutes later, the hum of Preston's security room came alive. Preston leaned toward the screen, eyes narrowing as the footage played. There, in grainy black and white, was Amora, slipping into his office, glancing around, her scarf trailing behind her. But what caught his attention next made the air go still. Behind him in the footage, just barely visible in the corner reflection of the glass cabinet, stood Victoria Hale. Watching. She said nothing. She simply smiled. Preston's expression darkened to pure rage. Lock her in, he ordered coldly. I want that girl found. And this time, Victoria didn't protest. She only turned away, hiding her smile as the house went on lockdown. The sun had already begun to set when the mansion's alarms finally went silent. Amora was dragged from the basement pantry by two guards, her wrists bruised from their grip. Ethan fought to intervene, shouting, she didn't do anything. But one of the guards struck him hard across the face, sending him crashing into a shelf of crystal glassware. Preston stood at the top of the stairs, his silhouette framed against the golden light of dusk. His voice was calm, almost eerily so. Bring her to me. Victoria appeared beside him, dressed in silk and pearls. Her expression was cool, her tone dripping with false pity. I told you, Preston. I warned her not to wander. Some people don't know their place. Amora's heart broke at those words. She set me up, she realized. From the beginning. Preston's eyes burned with cold fury as he descended the steps. You think you can steal from me, little girl? I didn't steal anything, Amora said, her voice trembling. I was cleaning. Someone must have left the drawer open. He smirked. You expect me to believe that? Ethan stumbled forward, blood on his lip. Sir, she's telling the truth. Before he could finish, Preston turned and nodded to a guard. The man slammed the butt of his gun into Ethan's stomach, sending him to the floor. Amora screamed, trying to run to him, but another guard yanked her back. Please. He didn't do anything. Preston's voice was ice. Neither did you, apparently. But you still managed to make my wife cry and humiliate me in front of my guests. Victoria sniffed delicately, pressing a tissue to her dry eyes. She frightened me, Preston. She was sneaking into your office. I didn't know what she planned to do. Amora stared at her in disbelief. You asked me to help you. Victoria met her gaze, lips curving into the faintest smirk. I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan tried to rise again, but one of the guards shoved him down. Preston's patience was gone. Lock him up in the shed, he ordered coldly, and take her to the pool. The pool? One of the guards echoed, uneasy. Preston's tone dropped lower, deadly calm. I want her to think about what happens to people who cross me. The guards dragged Amora outside, her screams echoing through the night as the mansion lights glowed against the dark water. They threw her into the pool enclosure and locked the glass doors behind her. She banged on them until her hands hurt. Please, let me out. But no one came. She sank to the cold tiles, shivering, staring at her reflection in the rippling water. In the distance, she could still hear Ethan's groans, muffled by walls and cruelty. Hours passed. The moon drifted across the sky. Then, footsteps. Preston's voice, low and cruel, drifted through the glass. He was on his phone, pacing by the balcony above. Yes, tomorrow, he said. Make sure the tank is ready. I want the sharks fed before noon. He paused, a cold laugh escaping him. I promised my guests something unforgettable. Time they saw what happens when the help forgets her place. Amora froze, breath catching in her throat. Her body went cold. Sharks. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at the pool's dark water, realizing it wasn't just for show, it was a weapon. She pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering a prayer into the night. Tomorrow, she would die in front of them all. The Miami sun blazed down on the Hale mansion once again, turning the pools into mirrors of liquid blue. The mansion was alive with activity. The same sprawling terraces filled with politicians, billionaires, and media crews setting up cameras to capture every glittering detail. White tents shaded extravagant food displays, and crystal glasses sparkled in the sunlight. This was the event of the year, a celebration of wealth and power. Amora moved among the guests, her uniform stiff and uncomfortable. She balanced trays of champagne, feeling every eye on her, some curious, most indifferent. Preston's laughter rang out from the center of the terrace as he greeted his high-profile friends, arms wide, showing off the mansion's grandeur. Victoria walked beside him, elegant as ever, her smile perfect. But Amora noticed the way she never met her eyes, never acknowledged her presence. It was as if she didn't exist. She tried to stay invisible, serving hors d'oeuvres with practiced efficiency. But Preston had other plans. He sauntered toward her, a gleam of cruelty in his eyes. "Amora," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Come here, dear. Let everyone see how well you work under pressure." The laughter of nearby guests made her stomach churn. She swallowed, trying to force a smile, but it faltered as he circled her like a predator. "You know," he continued, leaning close enough for his breath to brush her cheek, "I always wondered what would happen if someone from your background tried to mingle with people like us." Before she could respond, he shoved her toward the pool. Gasps erupted around the terrace. Some guests laughed nervously, others froze in shock. Victoria's eyes swept over her, but she said nothing, only turned her face toward the crowd, sipping her champagne. Amora stumbled, arms flailing, and plunged into the crystal blue water. Cold hit her instantly, stealing her breath. The marble edge slipped under her hands, and panic set in. "Let me out!" she screamed, water filling her mouth as she thrashed. Preston leaned over the railing, clapping slowly. "Don't worry, sweetheart. They say sharks like to swim with new company." Guests murmured, some taking out phones to film, others looking around in unease. The music faltered. A waiter dropped a tray in fright. Amora kicked, reaching for the poolside. Her uniform weighed her down, each movement a battle. Shadows moved beneath the surface, sleek and dark, cutting through the blue. Her lungs burned, and her vision blurred. She thought of Malik, of Ethan, of all the people depending on her. Not like this, she thought desperately. Then, just as the panic reached its peak, there was a sound, a loud, violent splash from the far side of the pool. Guests screamed and stumbled backward. Cameras tilted, trying to capture what was happening. Preston froze mid-laugh, eyes wide. What was that?" he shouted. Victoria finally glanced over the railing, her smile faint but knowing. Amora disappeared beneath the surface, but the water erupted violently behind her. Something moved with a force no one expected. The guests fell silent, their laughter replaced by gasps of terror. Preston stumbled back, fear flashing across his face for the first time all day. Preston's laughter echoed over the terrace, rich and cruel, until it didn't. The water in the pool began to churn violently, throwing sunlight into frantic, glittering patterns. Guests stepped back, clutching their champagne flutes, unsure if they should scream or run. Then she appeared. Amora's head broke the surface of the water, but not where anyone expected. She was safe behind a thick glass wall, water lapping gently around her as if nothing had happened. Her uniform was soaked and heavy, her hair plastered to her face, but her eyes were fierce, alive. From behind the wall, Ethan Rowe emerged, the ex-Marine who had saved her countless times. He had deactivated the mechanical shark divider while everyone's attention was on the commotion at the far end of the pool. He leaned over the edge of the safe enclosure, shouting above the gasps and cries. "Amora, get out." She scrambled onto the poolside platform inside the enclosure. Relief flooded her, but she didn't lower her guard. Her gaze swept the terrace, landing on Preston, who now looked like a man seeing a nightmare unfold for the first time in his life. The water beyond her protective glass erupted. The sharks, now freed by the slowly lifting divider, turned in perfect synchronization, their sleek bodies slicing toward Preston's side of the pool. Guests screamed, stumbling back against tables, dropping glasses and hors d'oeuvres in panic. Victoria Hale's face paled, her perfect composure faltering for the first time. She held her champagne glass like a lifeline, lips pressed tight. Preston's eyes darted between the walls separating him from the water and the growing frenzy behind him. His confident smirk vanished, replaced with disbelief and pure terror. "Get them out of there," he shouted, waving at his security. But the guards froze, unsure what to do as the shadows under the water moved faster than anyone had ever seen. Amora's chest pounded, adrenaline and fear coursing through her veins. Ethan's voice was calm but urgent. "Stay inside. Don't come near the edge until I tell you." Preston's hands clenched at the railing. "Stop it. Stop it now." The sharks swam closer, circling, their fins breaking the surface in jagged flashes. Preston stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the terrace. A scream cut through the chaos from one of the servants. "He's slipping." Time seemed to stretch. Preston flailed, arms windmilling, as his polished shoes skidded across the wet marble tiles. The crowd froze in terror. Cameras captured every moment, the flashing lenses reflecting the sunlight, and the sound of metal scraping against stone echoed across the terrace. Amora pressed her hands against the glass, heart racing, as she watched the man who had tormented her for months teetering dangerously over the pool. Ethan's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a silent reminder that she was safe for now. The shark's fins sliced closer, their movements precise, as if guided by some unseen force. Preston's breath came in ragged gasps. Someone shouted again, panic rising, "He's falling! His!" And the world seemed to pause, every eye fixed on the billionaire dangling over the edge, the water waiting below. Preston Hale teetered on the slick marble edge, his polished shoes sliding dangerously. Time slowed, every heartbeat amplified in the stunned silence of the terrace. Then, with a scream that sounded half rage and half terror, he lost his balance. He plunged into the pool. The water erupted in a violent splash, sending waves crashing over the glass walls of Amora's safe enclosure. Guests screamed, some stumbling backward into tables, knocking over crystal glasses and trays of hors d'oeuvres. Cameras whirred, capturing every chaotic second, the very footage that would later go viral, documenting the downfall of a man who had once seemed untouchable. Victoria Hale clutched her champagne glass, her lips pressed tight. For a moment, she looked genuinely horrified, then sank gracefully to the floor. Fainting, or pretending to, she collapsed with impeccable poise, her hair spilling over her shoulders as though choreographed. Guests rushed to her side, some whispering about how delicate and frail she appeared. Amora's heart raced as she grabbed Ethan's arm. His in the water. Are they going to hurt him? Ethan's eyes were steady, calculating. No, not if we get out of here first. Keep moving. He pulled her toward the terrace exit, weaving through panicked guests and tripping waiters. The sharks in the far side of the pool thrashed, sleek fins cutting through the water like knives, but Preston never emerged from the deep end. From the other side, security guards scrambled, shouting into radios, their faces pale. Get the pool covered. Where's the net? Where's the barrier? But it was too late. The spectacle had already begun, and the guests' screams only added to the frenzy. Amora's soaked uniform clung to her skin. She stumbled into the arms of Ethan, who steadied her with a gentle grip. It's okay, he whispered. We're getting out. The cameras continued to roll, capturing the entire disaster. The flailing billionaire, the fainted Victoria, the chaos of wealth and privilege unraveling in real time. Amora glanced back, her pulse racing, and saw Preston struggle beneath the water briefly before disappearing completely from view. Something primal stirred in her, a mix of fear, relief, and vindication. The man who had tormented her, humiliated her, and endangered her life was finally powerless. "Is it over?" she whispered, voice trembling. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He kept her close, scanning the terrace for signs of anyone coming after them. Suddenly, the sound of authoritative footsteps echoed through the grand hallway. Heavy boots on marble, precise and purposeful. Amora's stomach dropped as a group of men in suits, badges gleaming, entered the mansion. One stepped forward, holding thick envelopes. "FBI. Warrant to search the premises. Everyone stay where you are." The crowd froze. Cameras clicked frantically, catching the new arrival. Guests murmured in panic and curiosity. Ethan tightened his hold on Amora's arm. "You hear that? We're not done yet. But this is the beginning." Amora swallowed, her wet hair plastered to her face, and watched the agents move through the mansion with military precision. Victoria rose slowly from the floor, her eyes scanning the new arrivals, lips pressing together in a secretive smile. Amora's chest tightened. The chaos of the party had turned into something bigger, more dangerous, and more promising than she could have imagined. The mansion buzzed with controlled chaos as FBI agents swept through every hallway, examining desks, drawers, and locked cabinets. Preston Hale, soaked and humiliated, sat cuffed on a marble bench, his expensive suit ruined, eyes blazing with fury and disbelief. Guards tried to comfort him, but the man who had once ruled the mansion like a tyrant was now powerless. Victoria stood nearby, flawless as ever, a glass of champagne in hand despite the turmoil. She smiled for the cameras, posing for reporters who had somehow made it onto the terrace. Asking questions she answered with perfect composure. Amora stood at the edge of the crowd, wet and exhausted, clutching Ethan's hand. Her chest tightened as she watched Victoria receive all the praise. In press statements, Victoria spun the narrative with meticulous care. She had discovered the secret offshore accounts, gathered evidence of Preston's fraud and abuse, and delivered it to the authorities. Amora's stomach sank. She took credit for everything. Ethan's jaw tightened beside her. "She's ruthless," he muttered. "But she's not wrong. Preston got what he deserved." Preston's voice, hoarse and broken, rose in protest. "That woman. She's lying. She set her up. That girl." Victoria interrupted, calm and icy. "Mr. Hale, the law doesn't care about excuses. Only facts." She raised her chin, eyes sharp. "And the facts are damning." The FBI agents confirmed the charges. Preston Hale was arrested on counts of fraud, assault, and endangering employees. The cameras captured his disgrace as he was led from the mansion in handcuffs, every expensive accessory and symbol of wealth rendered meaningless in that moment. Victoria wasted no time consolidating power. Within hours, she had assumed control of Hale Industries. Press releases praised her leadership and courage in exposing corruption. She was poised to become the new queen of the empire, admired for her poise and strategic brilliance. Amora remained silent, standing in the shadows, unnoticed by the media frenzy. The evidence she had risked her life to gather had secured Preston's downfall, but her name was nowhere in the reports, nowhere in the statements. She had saved countless lives and exposed crimes, yet the world would never know it. She stared out at the pool, now calm and still, the same water that had almost taken her life just days ago. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "You did good," he said. "Even if nobody knows it." Amora nodded, but the relief she should have felt was muted by a sinking weight in her chest. She had thought justice meant more than survival. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a sound that made her heart drop. She pulled it out, hands trembling. "Hello?" she whispered. "Amora Johnson." The voice on the other end was tight with urgency. "This is St. Mary's Hospital. Malik's surgery. It's been cancelled. The bills haven't been paid. We're sorry, but we cannot proceed until payment is secured." Amora's stomach lurched. Her hands shook. "Cancelled? But I thought." The line went silent, leaving her with only the echo of her brother's name and the weight of failure pressing down on her. She sank into a chair, staring at the phone. All the power, all the danger she had survived, and it hadn't saved the one person she loved most. The neon lights of the 24-hour diner flickered overhead as Amora wiped down tables, her hands raw from hours of scrubbing. The air smelled of fried grease and stale coffee, a cruel reminder of how far her life had fallen in just a few weeks. She had thought the mansion's chaos was the worst she'd face, but reality had a sharper edge. Malik's cancelled surgery haunted her like a shadow. Bills stacked higher than her exhaustion, each reminder a pang of guilt. She moved through the night like a ghost, serving customers who didn't notice her struggle. Ethan worked beside her whenever he could, slipping envelopes of cash into her apron pockets and whispering words of encouragement. "We'll find a way," he said firmly, eyes steady. "We always do." But some nights, even Ethan's presence couldn't quiet the despair that settled in her chest. The betrayal stung. Victoria had claimed her victory, her evidence, and taken the glory, leaving Amora unseen, unpaid, and invisible. The world thought she was just another maid, one more worker to wipe up the mess of the rich. Yet something inside Amora refused to break. Each night shift, each dollar she earned, she felt herself growing stronger. She planned, saved, calculated, small steps toward reclaiming what mattered most. Malik's life, her dignity, her future. Then, a message blinked on her old, cracked phone. She hesitated before opening it, not recognizing the number. "Amora," it read. "It's Lila. Please don't be afraid. I need to say I'm sorry." Her breath caught. Lila Hale, the one beacon of kindness in the mansion, had reached out. Amora's fingers trembled as she replied cautiously, words tentative. Minutes later, Lila's response appeared. "I know what she's done. Victoria. She's dangerous. I want to help. But you have to trust me." Amora's pulse quickened, hope and fear mixing in a bitter cocktail. She had learned the hard way not to trust Victoria, and yet, the thought that Lila, the daughter who had once been her friend in secret, was reaching out felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Lila, what's happening?" Amora typed. The reply was almost immediate. "I can't tell you over text. But I found something. Something you need to see. Meet me at the park near the hospital. Midnight." Amora's heart raced. She nodded to herself, determination hardening her resolve. She would see Lila. She would get answers. She would fight. Minutes later, another message arrived. This time, a photo. Victoria Hale, in the shadowed alley behind the mansion, shaking hands with a man whose face was obscured by a hood. A gun glinted at his side. Amora's fingers froze on the screen. Her stomach churned. Ethan noticed her sudden silence. "What is it?" he asked, leaning over. Amora swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "Victoria, she's hired someone. A hitman." The diner's fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright, too harsh. The world she had fought to survive was now spinning faster than ever, and the stakes had escalated far beyond money or recognition. She pressed the photo into Ethan's hands. "We have to stop her, before it's too late." His jaw clenched. "Then we don't waste a second." And in that moment, amid despair, sweat, and the smell of fried grease, Amora realized she was ready to fight. Not just for Malik, not just for herself, but for the life she refused to let Victoria steal. The wind cut across the docks, carrying the salty tang of the bay as Amora and Ethan crouched behind the rotting planks of an abandoned boathouse. The old structure creaked with every gust, wood groaning under their weight, but it was safe, for now. Ethan peered through a gap in the boards, eyes scanning the dark water. "She doesn't play fair," he muttered, voice low. "Victoria Hale wants you gone before Preston's trial even begins. She's ruthless." Amora pressed her hands to her knees, shivering. I thought we were safe after the FBI came in." Ethan shook his head. "She doesn't care about law or order. All she cares about is control." Amora's heart thumped in her chest. Fear was constant, gnawing, but so was determination. "Then we have to disappear," she said. "Atlanta. Malik. That's the only way I can survive this and help him." Ethan nodded. "We leave at dawn." I have a car stashed near the highway. No one will know where we're going. You'll be safe. Finally. For a moment, the two of them were silent, listening to the water lapping against the pilings, the distant hum of the city behind them. The night felt like it held its breath with them. Amora glanced at Ethan, noticing the tension in his jaw, the way his dark eyes softened when they met hers. "Ethan," she whispered, voice barely audible. He looked down at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips despite the danger around them. "I'm not letting anything happen to you, Amora. Not Victoria, not Preston, not anyone." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the warmth of his presence, but fear held her in place. I don't know what I'd do without you." Ethan reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "You'll never have to find out," he said quietly. The closeness, the vulnerability, the raw edge of the moment wrapped around them. For a heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist. But the moment shattered as a shadow moved across the water. Amora stiffened. Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her back into the darkness. "Stay down," he hissed. The hitman, Victoria's silent predator, was closer than they realized. His figure slipped between the dock pilings, silhouette unmistakable against the faint city lights reflecting on the water. Amora's stomach sank. "He found us," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan tightened his grip, scanning the surrounding area. "We need to move. Now. If he sees us." The sound of footsteps on wetwood echoed ominously, growing louder, deliberate, unrelenting. Amora swallowed hard, her pulse in her throat. She clutched the folder containing the evidence she had risked everything for, the same folder Victoria had tried to weaponize. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice steady but urgent. "Once we leave here, there's no turning back." Amora nodded, resolve hardening. "For Malik. For justice. For us." A gun clicked somewhere in the darkness. The hitman's voice cut through the night, low and chilling, "You can't hide forever." And in that instant, the abandoned boathouse felt impossibly small. The night air was thick with salt and fear as Amora and Ethan sprinted along the creaking wooden docks. Moonlight glinted off the water, reflecting in the wet planks beneath their feet. Behind them, the hitman's footsteps thundered in pursuit, every step a reminder that their lives were on the line. "Faster!" Ethan hissed, dragging Amora by the arm. Her shoulder burned from the sharp pain where a stray bullet grazed her during the first shot. Blood soaked through her blouse, warm and sticky against her skin. She gritted her teeth, refusing to cry out. The docks twisted like a labyrinth, narrow passages between boats and warehouses making escape a dangerous gamble. A crate tipped over under Amora's foot, sending a clatter across the planks. The hitman's shadow leapt over it effortlessly, closing the distance. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Keep running." They ducked behind a row of moored yachts. Amora struggled to catch her breath, each gasp sharp in her lungs. "Ethan, I can't," she panted, but he shook his head fiercely. "You can, Amora. You have to." The hitman rounded the corner, gun aimed, eyes cold and merciless. Ethan charged without hesitation, tackling the man into a stack of shipping crates. Wood splintered under their weight. The struggle was brutal, fists, elbows, and grunts echoing in the night air. Amora tried to pull herself along, her fingers slick with blood and sweat. She peeked over the crates, heart pounding as Ethan slammed the hitman to the ground. A harsh crack sounded as Ethan hit the man's arm with a plank. The hitman yelped, scrambling for the gun, but Ethan landed a final blow, sending him sprawling into the water. For a fleeting second, victory felt real. Ethan breathed heavily, sweat and blood on his forehead. But then he slumped forward, clutching his side. A deep gash ran across his abdomen, crimson soaking his shirt. I'm fine," he gasped, but Amora could see the strain. She rushed to his side, pressing her hand against the wound. "No, you're not fine. You're bleeding." Ethan managed a strained smile. "Just keep moving. We're not safe yet." They stumbled along the docks, the moon casting long shadows over the abandoned warehouses. The faint wail of sirens pierced the night. Amora froze. "What is that?" she whispered. "Police," Ethan muttered, eyes narrowing. "But I don't think it's for us. Yet." The sirens grew louder, flashing lights illuminating the water and planks. A detective stepped from a patrol car, flashlight cutting through the darkness. His eyes widened as he saw her soaked, blooded, and clutching Ethan. "Wait. I know you," he said, voice tense. You're the maid from the Hale mansion. The one in all the footage." Amora's stomach dropped. Every move they had made to survive, every step to escape Victoria's wrath, it was now visible to someone with authority. Her hands trembled as she glanced at Ethan, whose grip on her arm tightened. The siren's wail grew insistent, echoing across the docks, drowning out the sound of the water and their ragged breathing. Amora's mind raced. Were they safe now, or had their escape just led them into an even greater danger? The fluorescent lights of the Miami police interrogation room buzzed faintly as Amora sat stiffly in the metal chair, her shoulders still throbbing from the bullet wound. Ethan sat beside her, bruised and bandaged, watching quietly as the detective slid a folder across the table. "Amora Johnson," he said, voice even but commanding. "You've been through a lot tonight. We need the truth. Everything about the Hale mansion, Preston Hale, Victoria, everything." Amora took a deep breath, her fingers brushing at the damp bloodstain on her blouse. She hesitated for a moment, thinking of Malik, the surgeries she'd almost lost, and the lives ruined by the Hale's greed. Then, determination hardened inside her. "I'll tell you everything," she began. Her voice was low but steady. "Preston Hale isn't just a tyrant in his mansion. He's been committing fraud, racial discrimination, and abuse for years. His company used offshore accounts to launder money, manipulate employees, and cover up crimes. Victoria, she orchestrated everything that happened in the mansion, including the party, the sharks, and even his near death at the pool." The detective raised an eyebrow. "She set him up?" Amora nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Yes. She used me, the staff, and even her own husband's arrogance to get him out of her way. And she's been manipulating the law, the media, even me. I risked my life trying to gather evidence, and she took credit for it." Ethan added quietly, "She's clever. But ruthless. And she won't stop." The detective leaned back, scanning Amora and the papers she'd provided, the recordings, the photographs, the hidden folder of Project Blackbird. "This corroborates a lot we couldn't prove before. You've just reopened the case against Preston Hale." Amora's chest tightened. Justice had finally begun, but at what cost? Her blood, sweat, and risk had gone unseen. And Victoria still roamed free. Meanwhile, in the dimly lit cell of Miami County Jail, Preston Hale sat alone, staring at the concrete walls, cuffs biting into his wrists. His expensive suit and arrogance meant nothing here. His phone call earlier had brought news he couldn't stomach. Victoria had been quietly advancing her influence, securing control of the company, and positioning herself as the savior to the public. Every detail of the pool incident, the FBI raid, and Amora's survival gnawed at him. His fury was raw, venomous. He pressed a hand to his forehead, pacing the small space. All of it is her doing," he muttered. "She planned this from the start. She used everyone, even me." His eyes narrowed, lips curling into a snarl. Behind the bars, in the cold, echoing cell, he clenched his fists. "They think they've won," he hissed to himself, voice low and dangerous. "But I will make them pay. Every last one of them. That girl, Amora, she hasn't seen the worst of me yet. Victoria, she will regret every choice she's made. Every move she thinks she's won with will crumble." The cell was silent except for the distant echoes of the jail, but Preston's mind raced with revenge. Every injustice, every humiliation, every betrayal fueled the fire inside him. And as the lights flickered above, his eyes glinted with a promise of fury. The next morning, Amora woke to a world that had shifted overnight. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, notifications, texts, News alerts. Headlines screamed from every corner of the internet. Maid exposes billionaire crime empire. Courageous housekeeper brings down Preston Hale. From servant to hero, Amora Johnson stands against corruption. Amora sank into the chair at Ethan's apartment, still bruised and bandaged, scrolling through the articles in disbelief. Photos of her soaked and blooded at the mansion had gone viral. Videos of Preston's fall into the pool and the chaos at the party were replayed millions of times. Millions of eyes had witnessed what she had endured, and survived. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You did it, Amora," he said softly. "The truth is out, and everyone can see what he really is." Amora shook her head, a mix of pride and lingering disbelief in her eyes. "It's not just me," she whispered. "Ethan, Lila, everyone who helped me. I couldn't have done this alone." Across the country, Preston Hale's empire began to crumble. His board members resigned, investors pulled out, and creditors froze accounts. News outlets dissected every scandal, every secret deal. The power he had wielded for decades evaporated in hours. Victoria Hale, realizing the tide had turned against her, vanished. Reports claimed she had fled the city, leaving her empire behind. Her public image, once untouchable, was tainted with whispers of manipulation and betrayal. Amora's thoughts, however, were with Malik. The story of her courage inspired people nationwide. Within hours, donations poured in, friends, strangers, and even sympathetic journalists contributing to cover her brother's surgery. Within a day, St. Mary's Hospital confirmed the procedure was fully funded. Amora cried quietly when she heard the news. Finally, Malik would get the care he desperately needed. Ethan squeezed her hand, smiling. "You did this for him. You're amazing." She nodded, overwhelmed by relief and gratitude. I never thought people would care, that the world would actually help." The media frenzy continued, interviews lined up, talk shows calling. Amora's story became a symbol, proof that even the powerless could take on the most ruthless, corrupt elites. Children watched the videos in schools. Activists cited her bravery in rallies. She was no longer just a maid. She was a beacon of hope, a living testament to courage. That evening, exhausted but exhilarated, she returned home with Ethan. The apartment felt peaceful, temporary respite from the chaos that had become her life. As she settled on the couch, a small envelope caught her eye, slipped under the door. The handwriting was unmistakable, sharp, elegant, and familiar. Her breath hitched. She recognized it immediately. Preston Hale. Amora's hands shook as she picked it up, sliding the flap open. Her eyes widened as she saw the contents inside. The words made her blood run cold. "This isn't over." Amora stood at the gates of the Hale mansion, sunlight glinting off the empty marble terraces. The estate was eerily quiet, stripped of the opulence that had once masked cruelty and deceit. Security cameras had long been disabled, and the grounds were overgrown in places, an empire crumbling, a house hollowed of life. The envelope's message had been simple but haunting. "Come. Preston Hale wants to see you. Alone. Today." Ethan's hand lingered on hers. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, worry etched across his face. Amora drew a deep breath, straightening her back. "I need to know why, and I need to see it for myself." Her voice was calm, steady, filled with the quiet power that had carried her through months of terror and survival. Inside, the mansion smelled of dust and cold stone. The echo of her footsteps carried down long, empty halls. She passed rooms where memories of pain and betrayal lingered like shadows. She imagined Preston's sneering face at the pool, Victoria's smirk as she manipulated them all, and the countless hours she had worked for nothing but survival. A figure stirred in the grand hall. Weak, gaunt, his expensive suit hanging loosely on his frail frame, Preston Hale looked nothing like the man who had once ruled the mansion with fear. Illness had shrunk him, bent his shoulders, and dulled his arrogance. "Amora," his voice rasped, almost fragile. She stopped, letting the weight of the moment settle. She did not flinch, did not tremble. She stepped closer, eyes locked on his. Calm, measured, unafraid. I wanted to apologize, he whispered, his words weak, forced through labored breaths. I wanted forgiveness, before it's too late. Amora studied him for a long moment, silence stretching between them like a blade. She could feel the gravity of years of abuse, manipulation, and terror suspended in that room. You wasted your life, she said finally, voice low but firm. You destroyed the people around you to feed your ego. You thought power would protect you. It didn't. Preston's lips trembled, and he coughed violently, clutching at his chest. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, as though death had already brushed close. I wanted to make things right, he rasped, eyes pleading. Amora shook her head slowly, walking past him to the center of the hall. She felt the quiet power of survival, of endurance, of justice earned not through wealth but through courage. She let him see her, whole and unbroken, while he shivered in the shadow of what he had lost.